What's up YouTube? It's me, Topher Crost. If I seem a little less upbeat than normal, it's because I just had to relive all the saddest moments from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Whether you have seen the show or not, Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of the most well-made shows of all time. It has interesting characters, each with different but engaging backstories, great music behind it, and some of the best storytelling I've ever seen in any TV series. It managed to get my girlfriend, who isn't the biggest fan of cartoons or anime, hooked. Really, almost anyone can relate to this series and enjoy what it has to offer. You get so invested in the characters and the story you forget that it's simply a cartoon because despite its premise, the characters feel so real. And like any great show with a great tale to tell, it has sad moments. And like I mentioned earlier, I have rewatched the series and picked out what I believe to be the saddest moments in Avatar: The Last Airbender. So without further ado, let's begin. In Book 2 of Avatar, Zuko decides that he and his uncle Iroh, who have been traveling together since his banishment from the Fire Nation, need to separate so Zuko can find his own path. Up till now, Zuko has been a not-so-nice guy, trying to capture the Avatar and bring him back to the Fire Lord. Then comes the episode, Zuko Alone. In this episode, Zuko finds himself riding a stolen ostrich horse thing, it's basically a chocobo, and having no clue where he is going or why. All he knows is that he needs food for him and the bird. He comes upon a couple on their way to town. He goes to mug them and stops when he notices the woman's pregnant. He enters a nearby town and buys some food. Some kids show up and throw eggs at some nearby men that become angry and blame Zuko for the eggs. Zuko refuses to rat out the kids, so the men take Zuko's food and walk off. The clerk who sold Zuko the food proceeds to tell our banished prince that those men are the only soldiers left in town and were supposed to protect the people, but instead use their authority to bully the townsfolk. The kid then thanks Zuko for not ratting him out and offers to take Zuko to his farm nearby. Zuko then finds out the kid's name is Lee and helps the boy's family take care of the farm for the day in exchange for some food. Through the whole episode, Lee and Zuko bond, and you could tell that Zuko is trying to change. He genuinely cares for this kid and his family. He's trying to do something right and becomes attached to Lee. Zuko then gives Lee a knife Iroh gave him as a present as a thank you. Later in the episode, after Zuko starts to leave town, Lee's mother catches him and tells Zuko that the soldiers came to the farm for food. Lee pulled a knife on them and the soldiers took Lee. Zuko confronts the soldiers to save Lee and ultimately reveals that he is the prince of the Fire Nation and a firebender. After saving Lee, Zuko retrieves the knife from one of the soldiers and attempts to give it back to Lee. Lee refuses, and since the town all know who Zuko is, they despise him, despite Zuko's attempts to help the town. And the first person who Zuko gets attached to since his uncle hates him. The first time Zuko plays for the good guys, and the good guys reject him. Zuko came alone, and left alone. Avatar: The Last Airbender is a show that isn't afraid to tug the heartstrings, especially when it comes to character development. And like most shows, you would expect it to hit towards the end of a season, or at least later in the show's character building like most shows, which have it down to a formula. Well, Avatar took that formula and spit in its face, because we got our first of many heartbreaking scenes in the third episode. So, as I'm sure you know, after Katara and Sokka find Aang in the iceberg, the first thing Aang wants to do, besides penguin sledding, is to go see his friends and his old master / father figure, Monk Gyatso. By the third episode, aptly named The Southern Air Temple, Aang is aware that he has been away for 100 years, but still assumes there are other airbenders because according to him, the only way to get to an air temple is through airbending or a sky bison. Once Aang, Sokka, and Katara arrive at the air temple, they proceed to walk around for a bit with no other airbenders in sight. Katara finds a Fire Nation helmet but doesn't tell Aang. The trio happen upon a statue of Aang's old mentor, Monk Gyatso, and from there, the episode has flashbacks showing Aang's life with his teacher and the monks 100 years ago. The whole episode builds you up, just to tear you down. At the end of the episode, Aang finds Gyatso's skeleton amongst century-old Fire Nation soldier bodies. It all hits Aang at once, and he gets so distressed he goes into the Avatar state for the first time in the series. Katara manages to calm Aang down, but Aang lays in her arms, crying, knowing that his mentor and friends died at the hands of the Fire Nation, and that he is the last of his entire nation left in existence. Through the whole series, it has been alluded to that Katara and Sokka had their mother taken from them by Fire Nation soldiers. In the 56th episode of the series called The Southern Raiders, you find out exactly what happened to Katara and Sokka's mom. The episode starts out with Zuko, who is part of the group now and everyone accepts him. Well, except Katara. Zuko asks Katara what he can do so that she will accept him into the group. Katara snaps back at him with, "How about you bring back my mom," or something to that effect. So Zuko talks to Sokka, who tells Zuko the story of Katara's mom. Katara's mom was taken and killed by the Fire Nation protecting the last waterbender from being taken by the Fire Nation, Katara. Zuko tells Katara that she knows who took her mother, the Southern Raiders, and that he can help her get revenge. Zuko and Katara find the Southern Raider ship and Katara goes after the captain because that's who took her mother. She is so mad that she bloodbends the captain into the ground and forces him to look her in the face. At this point in the episode, you could tell how much anger and sadness Katara had been carrying with her the entire time since her mother left. To make matters worse, the guy who Katara now has in a bloodbending hold is not the same captain who took her mother. Zuko and Katara interrogate the captain to find out where the original captain is and then proceed to the Fire Nation to find him. The duo eventually find and ambush the captain named Yan-Ra. Katara then forces Yan-Ra to remember who she is and almost kills him. I know this is more of a sad episode than a moment, but I feel the entire episode you got to see what Katara has been through. She feels guilt, anger, and unbelievable sadness at the loss of her mother. When she faces Yan-Ra, that all comes to fruition. The episode does end on a happier note, but you'll have to watch the show to see it. Not even the animals in Avatar can get out of the cycle of hardships that is Avatar: The Last Airbender. Which brings me to episode 30, The Library. It all starts out as a really lighthearted episode, which just goes to show you that you can never feel happy in the world and laugh without tragedy. Maybe that's why Avatar is so relatable. Anyway, at the beginning of the episode, all of the members of Team Avatar are picking out mini vacations for them to go on. Katara wants to go to a place called Misty Palms Oasis, which is basically a town surrounding a block of ice in the middle of a desert that's a hot vacation spot. When the group finally arrives, they meet a professor named Zai, who tells them about a secret library somewhere in the desert. The group and the professor set out into the desert and find the library, which is underground, except the highest window which they use to climb into the building. Since Toph is blind and Appa is big, the rest of the group leaves them outside. Inside they meet Wang Shi Tong, an owl spirit who controls the library. He tells Team Avatar that he doesn't allow humans in the building anymore because they use the information they find for war. Aang convinces the spirit that they are just there for knowledge, and they start looking for the map so they can invade the Fire Nation. The owl spirit finds out what they are up to and starts to sink the library to prevent the humans from coming in and out, and to keep Aang and the others inside the building. Outside the library, Toph notices that the structure is sinking and starts earthbending to hold the building up. She's giving it everything she has when some sandbenders show up and start fighting Appa in an attempt to capture him. Toph tries to save Appa, but the second she lets go of the library, it starts to sink rapidly. Toph has to make a decision. She can either save her friends in the library, or stop Appa from being captured. Toph hangs onto the library, all while being forced to listen to Appa being taken. Helpless to do anything, she apologizes to Appa as he gets dragged away. After Aang and the others jump out of the library, Aang notices that Appa isn't around. He asks Toph where Appa is, and Toph can only bring herself to shake her head. Aang tears up, and that's where the episode ends. A little later in the series than my last pick, in episode 35 titled The Tales of Ba Sing Se, we get what I consider the two saddest moments in the entire series by a long shot. The episode tells the story of how our favorite characters have been spending their spare time in Ba Sing Se. We get a story about Katara and Toph having a girls' day, Aang makes a zoo, Sokka spits out some mad haiku rhymes, and Zuko goes on a date. But from what seems like a fun filler episode, we get two sad stories. Seriously, the episode killed me inside, and made my girlfriend cry so much I had to get a towel to prevent her blanket from getting wet. That's right, there are two sad stories in this episode, but since they are short, I'm going to tell them both, as they are both part of my number one pick since me and my lady couldn't decide which one was more tear-jerking. First, I am going to go over the moment my girlfriend thought was the saddest in the series, and it comes from the Tale of Momo. At this point in the series, Appa is still separated from Aang and the group, and Team Avatar is staying in a nice house in the upper ring of Ba Sing Se. The short starts off with Momo having a nice dream about Appa and him. Lightning strikes and startles Momo awake, so he jumps in Sokka's bag to hide and finds a clump of Appa's hair. So our little lemur decides to go searching for Appa. Momo runs into 3 puma cats who chase Momo in an attempt to eat him, and through all the commotion he and the pumas get captured and taken to a butcher shop. Momo escapes his cage and rescues the pumas, and they become friends. The pumas notice the clump of Appa's hair tied around Momo, they take it and start running. They lead Momo to a footprint made by Appa. Momo realizes what it is and flies down to it. He curls up in it with Appa's hair and falls asleep as it starts to rain. And now I'm going to talk about the moment that I consider to be the most heart-wrenching in the whole series. Once again, we start off with a short, this time titled The Tale of Ira. This short starts off with Ira going to a basket shop and picking out a basket. The shopkeep asks if it is for a date, which Ira responds no, but it is for a special occasion. Then Ira walks a few steps and pushes the flower that the shopkeep has into the shade, explaining that moon lilies like partial shade and the flower starts to bloom. The episode goes on, showing Ira helping a kid stop crying and trying to teach a lesson to some other kids playing a game. He ends up running into a mugger. The mugger holds Ira at knife point and demands that Ira give him all of his money. Ira comments on how the mugger's stance is weak and then knocks him to the ground taking his knife. Then Ira helps the man up and teaches him a better stance. After the quick lesson, Ira tells the mugger that he doesn't seem like the criminal type. The mugger tells Ira that he is confused. Some time passes and Ira convinces the mugger to pursue his dreams. The mugger thanks Ira, commenting on how no one else has ever believed in him. At this point in the series, even though we know that Uncle is on the wrong team, he is still a good man, who only wants the best for others, and this short spends the whole time up till the last moments, reminding us of that fact. At the end of the short, Ira walks up to the top of a hill and sits under a tree at the top of the hill with the basket he bought from the store earlier. He pulls out a rock, lights 2 incense matches, and then proceeds to pull out a picture of his son who died in the war. He tells his son happy birthday and comments on how he wishes he could have saved his son. Ira, now in tears, sings Little Soldier Boy to his son as the camera fades out and states that this short was in honor of Mako. And for those of you that don't know who that was, it was the original voice of Ira, who died only a few months before this episode was released.